Welcome, everyone. It's a new week here at the Marijuana Times. It's Cannabis News. I'm your host, Joe Clare. It's September 23rd, 2019. You can find us at marijuanatimes.org. Click the video tab there to find the show. Also, you can search us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts as well for the video and audio versions of the show. Today, we're talking about WeedMaps and their plans to remove, unlicensed medical marijuana dispensaries and other retail shops from their site. Also, Washington, D.C. approves a new law allowing licensed medical marijuana patients, students, youngsters, youths, if you will, to use medical marijuana on school grounds. And a study from AP, AP did last week, or at least published last week, about CBD vapes that contain street chemicals. All of that coming up. But first, of course, Cannabis News is brought to you by NatureSide, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Grow safe and poison-free. Be regulatory compliant in the state that you are growing in. You do these things with NatureSide, because that's just how awesome NatureSide is. nature-side.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. This first story by Jason Sander at marijuanatimes.org. WeedMaps plans to remove unlicensed businesses from platform. This is a story, or at least I've alluded to WeedMaps taking unlicensed dispensaries off of their platform by the end of the year. I've alluded to it a couple times. Jason has gone more in depth with the story. If you want to check it out on marijuanatimes.org. It's also linked in the description of this video, as are all stories that I talk about. In an effort to reduce the number of unlicensed cannabis businesses and illicit transactions in illegal states, Jason tells us WeedMaps recently announced the details of a plan to remove these businesses and individuals. Despite the fact that adult use cannabis is legal in the state of California, there is still a large black market, something we've talked about before. You know, the number of illegal dispensaries like 3 to 1 over the legal ones or whatever. WeedMaps aims to do its part to push back against these illegal transactions. The company's plan is in response to allegations that WeedMaps is contributing to illicit cannabis sales, particularly in California. Additionally, the popular cannabis platform also announced that they would be taking steps to support licensed minority-owned cannabis businesses. WeedMaps add they plan to add improvements to the website so users can better identify and support licensed businesses. United Cannabis Business Association requested that WeedMaps be fined up to $85 million for violating California state regulations. So obviously, in this instance, WeedMaps wants to not only limit their regulatory liability, their criminal, civil liability, whatever they may face. Also, when you think about it, the future of WeedMaps is these licensed, regulated businesses. As more and more of the unlicensed businesses are shut down, or driven out of business by other economic factors, whether it's whatever the reason, the numbers are going to dwindle. The more legal marijuana becomes entrenched, the more supply there is, the lower prices come down, the more prices come down rather. And the future of WeedMaps, at least for their listing portion of their business, is going to be legal regulated businesses wanting to do business with them. Obviously, if they tick enough of them off, they can go to a competitor and start listing with them, and that competitor will start getting that money for the better listings, or however WeedMaps does it, the VIP listings or more exposure or whatnot. In any case, WeedMaps needs to keep these businesses happy. Plus, they don't want to, pay fines or be sued or any of that stuff. So they are moving to try to cut that off at the pass. And how much of an impact it will have, it will have some, obviously. If you have an unlicensed, unregulated dispensary and it's listed on WeedMaps, people are going to be able to find your business much easier than if it were not listed on WeedMaps. I don't know the statistics about what percentage of cannabis consumers find their dispensaries or retail shops through WeedMaps. I have no idea. But, it's some people, or else WeedMaps wouldn't exist, would they? Some people are going through WeedMaps. So it will suppress the ability of those illegal dispensaries, at least a little bit, to make sales, which will lead to a lot of them going out of business, which is the plan for however you feel about illegal dispensaries. They're not going to survive in the long run, because the government's not going to be making all this tax money and then say, oh, well, you guys are cool over here, you're not going to pay us anything. No, it's not the way government works. I'm not going to say you guys are cool not paying us anything. They will not stand for that. Eventually, if you have an unlicensed business, it'll be taken down. Next story here, WashingtonPost.com. D.C. approves law to allow licensed students to consume medical marijuana at school, something we've been seeing a lot of around the country in different jurisdictions, different states, lawmakers and politicians, and other officials making it legal for medical marijuana use at schools. D.C. lawmakers made it clear students are permitted to consume medical marijuana on school grounds. D.C. Council passed emergency legislation to clarify existing city law to ensure schools do not prohibit students with medical marijuana licenses from consuming the substance while on campus. The D.C. medical marijuana program was expanded to include minors in 2014, with advocates arguing that marijuana is an effective treatment for children with epilepsy. 8 minors in the district hold medical marijuana licenses, according to the district's Department of Health. Obviously, as I've said before, if recreational legalization is done well enough and the restrictions are lenient enough, then most adults will never, even no matter what their medical ailments are, will ever have a reason to need a medical marijuana card if they can just go to the store and buy what they need for whatever reason they feel like. They don't have to go through, going to a doctor and going to, a medical marijuana dispensary and all that. They can just go buy it. But medical marijuana will always be needed for kids. There's never going to be a time when a kid, a 12-year-old with epilepsy can just stroll into a retail shop and buy an ounce of kush or whatever. They're going to need a medical marijuana program that will house those and keep track of them and all the other things that politicians, lawmakers, and officials like to do to make sure that, things are okay and they're just not getting kids high. They actually have medical conditions and such. So eventually, if recreational legalization is robust enough, medical marijuana will be reserved pretty much exclusively for minors, and their ability to use a school is obviously going to be a big part of that. If you're somewhere 8 hours a day and you need medical marijuana, say, every 4 hours, well, it becomes an issue. It becomes a timing issue. You're somewhere where you can't use medical marijuana at a time when you need to use medical marijuana, which will result for them, a lot of parents pulling their kids out of school, homeschooling, private schools, charter schools, whatever. They can't medicate their children or have their children be allowed to be medicated at a public school. And again, it's taking money away from the government, and they are going to put their foot down when it comes to that. This last story, it says about a week old, but I think it's pretty important. It was during the flood of all the vaping illness stories and all that stuff that we covered pretty much on a daily basis for a little while. It's from APnews.com. It's an AP study about CBD vapes. Some CBD vapes contain street drug instead of the real thing. Jay Jenkins said he hesitated when a buddy suggested they vape CBD. It'll relax you, the friend assured. The vapor that Jenkins inhaled didn't relax him. After 2 puffs, he ended up in a coma. That's because what he was vaping didn't have any CBD, the suddenly popular compound extracted from the cannabis plant that marketers say can treat a range of ailments without getting users high. Instead, the oil was spiked with a powerful street drug. Some operators are cashing in on the CBD craze by substituting cheap and illegal synthetic marijuana for natural CBD in vapes and edibles, such as gummy bears, an Associated Press investigation has found. Practice has sent dozens of people like Jenkins to emergency rooms over the last 2 years, yet people behind spiked products have operated with impunity, in part because the business has boomed so fast. The regulators haven't caught up, while drug enforcement agents have higher priorities. In reality, things like this, regulators are never going to catch up with all of the bad operators, if you will. And to be blunt about it, whatever your word you want to use, if you're someone who packages a CBD product, but you really have something dangerous inside of it, you are a piece of garbage. You are a garbage human being. You deserve to be in a coma. Whoever makes these things and allows them out on the street to harm people, you deserve to be in a coma. If you make bootleg CBD and there's no CBD in it, and it's just like, well, some of it, a lot of the contaminated types, a lot of contaminated products that they studied, 10 to 30 contain types of synthetic marijuana drugs commonly known as K2 or spice that have no known medical benefits. And we've done stories on K2 and spice before, and you've heard the stories. This is not marijuana. It's not synthetic marijuana. These are chemicals, chemical concoctions made by people that are very dangerous and do a lot of damage. But it's one thing to say, oh, hey, this is K2. And someone says, oh, I'll try some K2. I've heard about it, but I'll take the risk. But to put it in something that says CBD, that people think is supposed to be perfectly safe, you are a piece of garbage. Absolute garbage. And for people out there, and this goes to the vaping thing as well, but also it goes for CBD. you have to do some research. I sit here almost every day and I talk about personal responsibility and people running their own lives and not having strangers make decisions for you and all of that. When it comes right down to it, you have to watch what you're ingesting. I get, if weed's illegal and your buddy's got a joint and he says, let's fire this up. Yeah, you're probably going to do that. Maybe even with a CBD, I can see that. You have no reason to think that your friend's going to hand you something that puts you in a coma. But generally speaking, if you're going to take CBD, if you're going to buy it online, you got to check to make sure they're third-party tested. If they're worth anything, it'll be on their website. You have access to all the testing and all the results if their CBD is worth anything. If it's not, and they don't have that testing, they don't have that data, don't. Just don't. And if you see some at a gas station, some CBD gummy or whatever, or worse yet, a vape pen, because when you're sticking stuff, when you're putting stuff in concentrates or whatever, you don't know what's in there. You can't look at that and say, oh, well, there's some bad chemicals in there. Or there's bad chemical interactions. Or when I put heat to this, it's going to cause bad chemical reactions that are going to harm me. If you haven't studied it online, if you haven't looked at that particular brand's website, if you haven't seen the testing, don't buy it. You'll be fine. Chances are you went your entire life without CBD gummies. You can wait a couple of days, do a little research. You've managed this far without CBD gummies. Just look into it. Just please. Whatever's in a vaporizer cartridge, just don't start vaping it. We know enough now to know that there's a chance that there's some bad stuff in it. Even if it says CBD on it, people can slap CBD on anything. But they actually have to if their products go through the testing and verified third-party testing, then that's what you don't look for. But, and again, I'm not saying this kid is an idiot. I mean, his friend said, let's try some CBD. He's like, okay. That happens a million times a day. Your buddy says, hey, let's try this. You're like, okay. And most people don't end up in a coma. I would dare say the vast majority of people don't end up in a coma from whatever activity that ensues. AB Commission Laboratory testing the vape oil that Jenkins used, plus 29 other vape products. That's 10 of the 30 that contain the K2 or the spice. Among them was Green Machine, a pod compatible with Juul electronic cigarettes that reporters bought in California, Florida, and Maryland. 4 of those 7 pods contained illegal synthetic marijuana, but which chemical varied by flavor and even location of the purchase. It's Russian roulette, said James Neal Kababic, director of Flora. Why do I have so much trouble with that name? I don't know why. Director of Flora Research Laboratories, which tested the products. So if you see anything that says Green Machine on it, avoid that. Obviously, 4 out of 7 containing illegal synthetic marijuana. That's pretty bad. That's a very, very large, fearfully large percentage. But in any case, watch what you're doing. Just because it says CBD on it doesn't mean it's safe. Because even though CBD is safe, it doesn't mean there's any CBD in it at all. There may be some of something else. You don't know. You got to watch the vaporizer stuff, whether it's THC or CBD or whatever. And go on the internet. As I said, most CBD brands that are worth anything, they'll have a little link there. It says testing results, third-party tests, whatever. Go check it out. A little bit of research goes a long way. There's also reviews, things like that of popular brands on YouTube. You want to stay away from the, new guys just came on the scene. They got this really dope CBD. Probably you can go with something more established, someone more established, a brand, a company more established that's had a lot of customers, that have not gone into comas, and be a good sign. Good sign. If all their customers are not in comas, then you can start to trust maybe a little bit what they got going on. Thanks everybody for checking out the show. Cannabis news, of course, 5 days a week at marijuanatimes.org. Search the Marijuana Times on YouTube, Vimeo, Apple Podcasts, all that jazz. Thank you to Nature Side, nature-side.com, and their organic, all-natural pesticides. Thanks to all of you for watching, listening, sharing, and commenting, spreading the news and the truth about cannabis with the show. You are awesome. Thanks for watching and listening today. We'll see you next time right here on Cannabis News.